Alright, class. Let's talk about our topic, medieval civilization. Our essential question, how did the medieval civilization help shape Western Europe? So during this time, two worlds, you had life in the manors and then life in the cities. Agricultural revolution in the manors and in the farms around Europe, with technological advances enable an increase in food and production. So with more food, then there's going to be, more population, so as the food increased and people were able to produce more food, the population increased. Heavy plow and three-field system made agriculture much more money. So the fact that they were able to utilize the serfs and create much more crops enabled them to sell them more, and so these kings and lords became more wealthy. The manor-bound serfs to the land in payment to the landlord. So there was this idea of feudalism where the serfs were bound to the land, and this was something that came about as a necessity to survive in Western Europe. Feudalism is a system of government that worked in Europe during the Middle Ages. So here's this pyramid of feudalism, and you can see at the top you've got the king, underneath that nobility or clergy, lesser nobility, peasants, and then serfs. Serfs had to stay on the land, they had to serve the people that owned the land. Where it said lesser nobility, those were often knights in shining armor who then served as a defensive or an army for the king. Cities began to expand at a tremendous rate during this time. Expanding cities increased the economic trade, which pushed the markets further into the Mediterranean as well as into the Far East. So people desired to have goods, and as they started to spread across the Mediterranean in the hopes of finding goods to be able to trade and sell, they went further and further east. And that's when ideas like the Silk Road, Marco Polo in the 1200s came about. Italian city-states such as Venice's Genoa became very wealthy. They became trading city-states, and the people there made a lot of money. Consolidation of the Roman Catholicism. Pope Gregory VII in 1073 reforms the internal aspect of the church, bringing most of the continent under one rule. So before this time, there were numerous people, let's say in Germany or in France or in Italy, that tried to hold power over the church. And when Pope Gregory VII started to combine that power, he was the one that unified it and brought the continent together. Popes brought about canon law, bureaucracy, reform, and financial authority. Pope Innocent III in 1198 wanted to rule the world. He was very political and reformed the liturgy, or what was actually studied in church. Saints and the idea of a monastic life grew. So the Franciscans, the Benedictine monks grew out of this time frame. Now, the strengthening of the center of the West. France and England began to show unified kingdoms. They weren't an entire country at this time, but they were starting to show that, a common language, common culture, especially England because it was on its own island. 1066, William the Conqueror takes England. English King Henry II starts circuit courts, grand jury, and trial by jury. All of these are ways in which the king could show his dominance over the land. In 1215, King John showed too much, and he was forced to sign the Magna Carta. Soon after that, English Parliament was formed. And so this is the first type of bureaucracy in which a king shared close to a constitutional monarchy, but not quite there yet. The Holy Roman Empire suffered from divisions. Other areas were torn by civil wars, such as Spain and into Eastern Europe, where Poland would be. Now, the medieval culture. In 1050, 1% of the people could read and write in all of Europe, and most of those were people in the church. Monasteries provided education. Cathedral schools began began the education of the wealthy. So the people that had a lot of money, the kings, the nobility, would send their sons, usually not daughters at all, but sons, to be learn how to read and write. Universities then began to teach at a higher education level. Ideas spread from around the Mediterranean, from Islamic, Judaic, Eastern thought was prevalent. So that when the Islamic continued to flourish during the Dark Ages in Europe, these ideas started to begin to spread back into Europe. Moses Maimonides, Thomas Aquinas, Averroes were a few of the greats that pushed thought throughout Europe. Great cathedrals were built, taking more than 100 years. Some of these cathedrals, granddad would start working on it, he'd have a son, he would work on it, and his son would continue to work on it and maybe finish it, or it would continue on. So these cathedrals were very large and took an enormous amount of time to make. The Gothic style was the most popular. So the medieval culture started to blossom, started to expand during this time. All right, remember, history's no mystery. Take good notes.